Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Wednesday. It is June 3rd. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday. So we'll be taking your questions, whatever's on your mind today in the soccer world. And there's a lot of different things going on in the soccer world today. The deadline that MLS had set for a decision from the players on their new proposal, well, the whole thing's kind of been a little convoluted. Basically, initially they said, we're not going to hear your proposal that you sent us on Sunday. You have till Tuesday. Then they pushed that back to Wednesday. Then MLS sent a new proposal. And I'm guessing Wednesday is still the day. By all accounts, everybody's on the same page, and they're going to move forward with this. The players started voting last night. Union reps talk to their players within their team, then they submit their votes, and you go forward like that. So, should be fine. We will wait and see if that is the case. But if it is good, will we get an announcement today about what Orlando looks like and what the next steps are? It's possible. We'll have to wait and see. So, stay tuned on the MLS front. We'll catch you up to date on that. We've also got other updates from around the world, stuff breaking off in England and Scotland. Jesse Marsch is being linked to Borussia Dortmund, which is a very interesting development. All kinds of things, but John has a Wall Pass Wednesday question to kick things off.
Yeah, for those of you watching on the video side of things on Twitch, you'll notice that usually I sport a little growth, and then I just kind of get fed up after a couple of days and shave. And Jason has kept his mustache beard combo right on trucking. When was the last time that you trimmed?
I trim them all the time, but really shaved it?
Yeah.
Before Mexico. I mean, it would have been before all this started.
Okay. And the reason that I ask is just out of curiosity, because of how we isolate, and we have been doing so, and with masks and everything going on, how long does it usually take for you, the listener, who deals with mustaches and beards? How long is it between shaves before you just kind of get fed up and you sit there and go, yeah, I got to get rid of this, and then we just start all over again? So,
I mean, it's going to depend on the. It's going to depend on the person and if they have a beard or not. I mean,
true, and that's the thing. But if it's a day, if you can't stand having a mustache or a beard, then it's a day. If they're like you and they just rock and roll ever since March, April, May, so
well,
no, 3 months.
Let's make sure this is clear. I've generally always had some level of a beard / goatee. I don't like to be completely clean shaven. It's just uncomfortable when in those phases when it starts to grow out. So how do you handle that? You just keep it short and go from there, typically. So I've generally had something. So this isn't that crazy. It's just I've kind of wanted to see what was going to happen because I've had the ability to, because I haven't had much going on. Yeah. So it's like, all right, what is it going to look like if it grows out? What does it feel like? And it's okay. I don't know if I'm going to keep it long term. It's okay. It's interesting, so I'm going to let it keep rolling for now.
And that was why I just kind of brought it up, because you have situations kind of like yours where it's like, yeah, let's just kind of see where it goes.
Mine's always grown in like 3 different colors, so I was kind of curious as to like what it was going to end up looking like. So like my beard has generally had more of the reddish highlights that my hair used to have when it was normal colored and not gray. So I kind of wanted to see, well, okay, what does that look like? Then the gray started growing in, and it's like, well, is the gray going to grow in everywhere? Is it going to grow in places? Is it going to be red in places? Is it going to be brown in places? What is it going to look like? And it's kind of a cornucopia of colors. So I just roll with it and see what happens.
For me, it is literally like 3 days, and then I'm done. Michael Head has actually jumped in this morning and shown his COVID growth. He says he hasn't shaved since February 25th.
Oh, wow.
The longest ever. And that's before us and the trip to Mexico.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
But for me, it's 3 days, and it gets itchy, and it's just, for me, you can't deal with it. And then when the boss, says that you're prickly, and she's not a fan of getting porcupine bristles in the face, that's another reason why.
Couple things that are popping off early this morning. Yesterday, we talked about FIFA's statement telling their members to use common sense, essentially, with anyone speaking out about the George Floyd situation, things that would ordinarily be punished for, in FIFA language, making political statements, etc. Gianni Infantino, late yesterday, made it really clear. He said, for the avoidance of doubt in a FIFA competition, the recent demonstrations of players in Bundesliga matches would deserve an applause and not a punishment. We all must say no to racism and any form of discrimination. We all must say no to violence, any form of violence. And there were questions about what the Bundesliga would do going forward. They will not do anything, which is the right approach here. Derek Ray has the update from the DFB, and Derek's translation is that no action will be taken against Hakimi, Sancho, Weston McKennie, Thuram. The committee wants to remain true to this stance in coming match days regarding any new anti-racism action in connection with the death of George Floyd. That's important. And again, I said this yesterday, and I think if you're looking at this, and I think some people have wondered why you've got demonstrations and things happening worldwide. It's that big of an issue, and this is not a stance FIFA usually takes. I think what it tells you is where FIFA's tried to avoid political stances or things that could be politicized in terms of players making statements on the field in matches. There's no politicizing here. It's right and wrong, and that's where we're at. So good job, FIFA, and I'm glad that they've set the standard that now everyone else in the soccer world will follow, and players will be able to speak out on this and not have to worry about getting a yellow card or a fine after the fact. The only question would be, and I'm assuming they're probably going to relax the standard on taking your jersey off, because that's not a political statement. To take your jersey off, it's an automatic yellow, whether you have something on your shirt underneath or not. Are they going to relax that in light of this? I probably would, just to be safe and smart all the way around, but that means across the board. If somebody's celebrating and they take their shirt off and there's no statement made, don't give them a yellow right now. Just let it roll for now. It's not important in that sense. That yellow card is not important. The statement is what's important.
Yeah, good stuff out of FIFA, and and also the FA was unlikely to punish for taking these as well.
They had said that. Yeah, no, these are the updates. FIFA took a more clear stance, not saying use common sense. They said, no, we would applaud this, don't do this. And Germany came out and said, everything's fine, we're not doing anything.
All right. So, yep, common sense, hooray. Good stuff on a Wednesday.
No. Past common sense. We have to make this very clear. FIFA yesterday said use common sense. Then, later in the day, Gianni Infantino said, no, common sense has zero to do with this. For the avoidance of doubt in a FIFA competition, the recent demonstrations of players in Bundesliga matches would deserve an applause and not a punishment. It's beyond common sense. It is saying, no, do not punish these people.
Yeah,
that's very, very important that FIFA is making that stance.
Yes, and it's good stuff. Good stuff. I like that this morning.
Yeah, it's a smart move for FIFA. It's the right approach to make.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, yesterday was one of our listeners' birthdays, Alex Krupp, and we are giving you a happy belated birthday. And we already have a question from the Krupps for tomorrow's show on the Tactical Thursday, and it will be related to the Bundesliga, so be ready for that. But hope you had a good birthday, Alex, and hope you're having a good day today. Thanks for listening to the show. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, MLS, let's get caught up on the latest as things kind of moved yesterday, and Jeff Carlisle, Paul Tenorio Samuel Stejkal, Hercules Gomez, Taylor Twellman were all involved in this. We gave you the updates as the show was winding down yesterday that things were progressing, things were moving forward, things were looking good. More details on everything from both ESPN and The Athletic. We'll start with Jeff Carlisle at the ESPN to give you the changes since we left, because we wondered where some of the decisions would fall here. Middle ground, sounds like the league is accepting the players' proposal of 7.5% of a salary cut. The bonus structure, I'm not exactly sure how that's going to fall. It might not be easy to actually quantify in terms of X percentage, but it sounds like there is a bonus cap on bonuses that will be paid out this year. That was part of the players' give back to the league in terms of saving money. The revenue sharing on media rights deals that are signed in the future, it's going to be 25% long term, but the first year of the new deal, it's going to be looks like 12.5% now, which it was going to be 10 initially from MLS, and 17 is what the players wanted. They settled on 12.5. That's where your give and take is. The league took the players' pay cut. It looks like the players are given a little bit on this 1 year of media rights. Cool. One of the big questions was the force majeure clause, as we've talked about over and over and over and over again, is a little confusing as to exactly what the clause was like, but by all accounts, the league is going to accept either in total or with minor adjustments the MLSPA force majeure clause suggestion, which is based off of the NBA's, which we've talked about a good bit. The attendance waiver element to it, whether that was going to define the force majeure clause or if it was a corollary to it, it sounds like that is going to be removed, and that's not going to have anything to do with it. As we said, we had a lot of questions about it because we're curious and we've been digging into what force majeure clauses were. If the idea was strictly a force majeure clause that had nothing to do with acts of God, acts of weather, pandemics, and was only about attendance, that wouldn't hold up in court. That would not be a force majeure clause. That would be an escape clause that would have nothing to do with that. It wouldn't hold up because it's within the control of the league. If it was an addition to a typical force majeure clause, then it's weird and it's complicated. It would have given, I'm assuming, the league some rights to do things outside of negotiation. That's not going to happen. So they've went to what the NBA does, and to sum up the NBA setup, the league would notify the players that they believe a force majeure event has happened, and look, they're kind of open to interpretation, but it's basically things that are completely outside of the control of either party to fulfill the terms of the contract. And that's where you get into weather, pandemics, war, terrorism, et cetera, et cetera. So once they notify them, in the NBA model, there is a negotiation period. There is also the league having the ability to reduce pay by a certain percentage of games that are canceled. And right now in MLS, for example, no games have been canceled. Everything has been postponed. So that wouldn't even come up yet. It could come up after you negotiate. But the other part of the negotiation is to basically modify the CBA in light of the force majeure event that happened. I'm assuming all that's in place. That's the NBA model. If that's what it's based on, it's pretty logical to do that. You notify, you say, we're in a force majeure event. We need to sit down and figure out how to work out going forward. And that's kind of what they did here, is just codifying it in the CBA agreement.
Yeah, and there were also the required reading comes from yesterday with Stejkal and Tenorio as they laid things out when it came to how things could possibly be. The tournament would keep teams in Orlando under the proposed Orlando plan for around 6 weeks. League's initial plan called for teams to be in Florida for a maximum of 10 weeks, play a minimum of 5 games. The agreement allows for players to opt out of playing, stuff we've heard before. If they're granted exemption due to medical or family conditions, Source to both of them expected players with pregnant partners to be granted an exemption. Players without an exemption who do not participate in the tournament will face what one source described as strict, in quotation marks, penalties.
By all accounts, all that was already pretty much agreed to. The Orlando plan, the medical protocols around it, all those were pretty much done by Sunday. There wasn't really a whole lot of discussion. It sounds like it really came down to the media rights portion and the force majeure clause that were the two big sticking negotiating points. And goes back to what we said yesterday. If that was it, if those were the 2 points, it's a little surprising that things escalated so fast because these two sides have had a good relationship and it's separated them from Major League Baseball. It's separated them from other sports because they've worked together to grow the game for the most part. Those issues, even the force majeure clause, which is complicated, they're manageable. They're things that you can talk through and work out. I don't know exactly what caused it. But to go from working things out, narrowing down the gaps and the numbers and percentages and how you're going to move going forward to threat of a lockout, that felt really out of place in this discussion. It felt really out of place in MLS labor discussions, period, to have that come out the way it did. And then the response from the players, which you're threatening to be locked out, you don't show up and you move forward and you talk, and they did get it done. Maybe it accelerated it. I don't know, but it's something that people have wondered, and I do too. Has it thrown a wrench in the long-term relationship? I'm going to hope not, because I think for MLS, that long-term relationship is very important, because as a growing league, you have to have your players on board. You have to have them feeling secure in how you're treating them, and I think they did. And I think they do, but I think they might have questions now because of the way this went down more than they ever would. And you're going to have to rebuild that trust, because it doesn't do you any good to have a fractured relationship, as we're seeing with Major League Baseball right now. The main reason why they can't get on the same page is they've had a bad relationship for a long time. There's no trust. MLS can't get there. So this happened. You've got to deal with it. You've got to rebuild the trust along with getting back on the field and all the other elements going into it.
Yeah, and I think that we'll go ahead and say that we're this close, everything will happen, MLS gets back on the field, you start in Orlando, you build from there. I think that the focus right now is, all right, let's get this deal done, let's get out there, then let's find out and figure out what this season is. And then, like you see with players with contract negotiations, all right, let's talk about things after the season. Yeah, we might have some folks who can talk about some of these elements about the CBA right now, but let's focus on getting a product out there, to do as best we can with it, and then we'll work on the future with what we've learned from this particular negotiation. So it's for me, it's two separate lanes of traffic right now. But the first thing to do, get everything settled, get the announcement out there, get to Orlando, figure out the rest of your season from there, then build with the CBA, knowing the information that you have from this particular aspect of the negotiation on the whole, to get back out on the field here in 2020.
Turner Kirby asked if San Jose has been allowed to start training yet, and I don't know if they have. I have not seen an update. I think they could have this week, but there hasn't been training because of the labor issue. So we'll see if there's an announcement out of San Jose. And the good news with the Quakes, Benjamin Galindo, things are looking better for him. He was in the hospital, had to have an emergency surgery after a stroke, and he is doing better according to reports. He's their assistant under Matias Almeida. So good news for the Quakes on that front. Haven't heard the update on training yet, but I don't know if they've really been able to give an update with no training happening. So maybe there's progress that we just don't know yet. Turner also asks about CCL, and I don't think we're going to know anything about CCL until we know more of the full picture of what MLS is going to do this season, including after the Orlando situation, what Mexico's plan to return is, and what Honduras's plan to return is, because those are the three countries with clubs involved right now in the CONCACAF Champions League. It's probably going to be July until we really know what it could look like, and even that might be a guess. So I'm not expecting anything anytime soon. Mexico right now, their next season is set to start, I believe, late July. That's typical. They do have some games they're going to have to probably figure out what to do with. They have a Copa MX final that they've talked about playing. Tijuana's in that. That would involve getting a game in somewhere. I'm not sure when you need to do that. They've got some things they got to sort out too. So it's still a little early on the CONCACAF side because they've got to manage CONCACAF League as well and figure out what that looks like. They've got to figure out CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. They've got to figure out qualifying for next year's Gold Cup. They've got a lot of things that they've got to juggle at the moment. And Champions League is one, and all of it is about money, as we have to constantly say, and it's not a negative, it's just the fact. CONCACAF needs to get competitions played to fulfill TV and sponsorship agreements to get money to some of these smaller federations that are in potential of not being able to operate, very soon, and that's a scary element. Turner does also laugh about FIFA's talk about discrimination and violence and says they're hypocrites. What I would say is maybe this is the thing that wakes them up. Maybe I'm just being optimistic. I don't know. It is something that needs to change in FIFA. It is something that needs to change in a lot of organizations, something that needs to change for a lot of people. And I don't want to be cynical about saying that statements are hollow, statements are not good enough, statements are this or that. This is more of an action, which is not just a statement on social media. It's not just Infantino saying something. It is an action, and it's making it clear that they don't want their members to be punishing people for speaking out on this. That's a good step. That's a good step in the right direction. But, yeah, it doesn't have the full meaning that it should if you don't see more from FIFA on dealing with chants in the stands, dealing with clubs and federations that always maybe isn't fair, historically have an issue with racial incidents in their venues. Okay, you've made a good statement and a good step, Gianni Infantino and FIFA. You have to continue to build on that. It's not just enough to make a statement right now when everybody is looking. You need to do it long term. Next time you have a player get chanted at in a building, in a game that FIFA is overseeing, which is pretty much every game in the world, then you need to handle it strongly. And it's beyond the time, I think, for fines and forcing games behind closed doors as a punishment. It's time for points being docked. It's time for being removed from competitions. It's time for big, strong punishments to be issued in these situations, because otherwise this is a hollow statement. I think there's more to it. I think this is more than just a hollow statement, but if we get into the fall or we get into World Cup qualifying and you have an incident that we've seen far too often and there's no strong response, then, yeah, we can look back at this and say it was just a statement, it was hollow, it didn't really do anything. It's all about the actions. It's all about what you do going forward right now. That's what this is all about. Everything that's going on in the world right now. It is about changing actions in the long term. It's not about the short term. It's not about getting the message right. It's not about winning the statement. It's about what you do going forward. And FIFA absolutely has to be looked at. But don't fall back into cynicism too much. It's not anything that's going to help in the long term. If people are showing a willingness to change and do things differently going forward, welcome it, applaud it, and hold them to it. That's what you have to do with this. We can't point fingers and say, well, you've been bad at this in the past. Yeah, a lot of people have. A lot of people have done it out of ignorance, out of spite, out of anger, out of just a bad feeling in their heart or brain. Does this wake that up? Not for everybody. Some people are going to make statements and have nothing to do with it afterwards. Some people are going to change. Got to embrace that and not tell everybody that is doing something about it that I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Or it's not good enough. Statement's not good enough. Got to show it with the actions. But let's applaud some steps in the right direction at least. And now let's hold them to that going forward. FIFA does have to be better, 100%. This is a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I completely agree with you here. I'm going to sit there and say, fantastic first step, love it. I want to see where you go from here. With past history, I'm still going to be a little reserved. I'm not going to say completely and totally cynical and cackle sarcastically about it, but love what you've done. Build on it from here. With past evidence, I admit that I'm cautiously optimistic in pursuing my positivity going forward. Right now, great first step. Build on it. That's all I can say.
Just don't be too cynical, y'all. That's what makes it hard for change to happen. If we don't believe anybody, let's not do that right now. Okay, let's try to look for the good in people, and when they show some good, let's embrace that, and hopefully that pulls more good out of these situations. I always in these moments remember Conan O'Brien's speech after losing the Tonight Show, where he said that cynicism is my least favorite quality, and I'd never heard anybody say it that way, and it absolutely stuck with me. It's something that I've held true. I'm always going to give you the opportunity to back up what you're saying and show it. And right now, there's a lot of people who are showing a lot of strong positive thought and a lot of strong positive thought for change, and this is good. Let's not be cynical and not expect it. Even the San Francisco 49ers with their statement yesterday.
And the Redskins.
Yeah. And all of them. I mean, we can go through all of them, and we can point and we can laugh and we can say, ha, where were you then? Where were you then? Does that accomplish anything? Does that bring about any change? It doesn't. It doesn't. Got to hold people accountable. Don't get me wrong. They don't get a pass because of the statement. But let's see where they go from here, and that's the important part, because that's what you can change. You can't go back and change mistakes that were made in the past. We can change what we do going forward, and if people are going to show a willingness to, let's keep pulling them along, and hopefully they do, and we go from there. All right, some other updates around the world. Europe, Spain, Barcelona. Barcelona's players, the pay cuts that they took before, it was reported a 70% pay cut. I think it was a little confusing in how that worked. They didn't give back money. It wasn't 70% of the entire season because they'd already played a long percentage of the season. It was 70% of their pay while the nation was in a state of emergency. So that ended up saving the club about 40 million euro, which is a big deal. It was roughly about 17% of their annual salary, which is a lot. So during that time, the club has saved 40 million euros. The club president went to the players, went to them at training, face-to-face, May 23rd, asked them to give more because the club's in a bad spot, and the players are ruling that out right now. He's trying to save another 10 million euro. It was a smaller pay cut, but he's trying to save a little more money going forward. If Barcelona's trying to find 50 million euro right now to move forward, that's why there's a couple things that I'm not digging a whole lot into right now. Transfer talk, because there's no telling who's going to have what and who's going to be willing to spend what. Barcelona is being reportedly linked in a strong way to Lautaro Martinez. Are they going to be able to find enough cash to make that happen? Because they've talked about swapping players, and I don't think Inter wants players. They want cash. So is that possible? I don't know. I don't know what transfers look like. You've got questions about what the transfer windows look like, as we talked about yesterday. I don't know, but $40 million so far, trying to save another 10. You know you're going to finish the season behind closed doors. You know you're not going to really bring in revenue outside of any TV money that's left. I don't know what the talk is in Spain about fans in the stands going forward into the fall, but these are the issues, and Barcelona is not immune from them like anybody else. In England, we're going to get into a lower division one here in just a second, but a couple things quick off the top. Sam Wallace of The Telegraph tweeted out that Amazon Prime is going to stream their 4 Premier League games free to air. You don't have to have Prime membership. You just have to stream it on the Amazon website. Talk of the Town reports that this morning the EFL is meeting to discuss several proposed amendments suggested by clubs on how to end the current season. And that's more about League One and League Two and what things look like. The EFL gave clubs until 2 p.m. yesterday afternoon to submit suggested proposals. They got quite a few. So now they have to sit and talk about it and figure out what's going to happen going forward. So be on the lookout for EFL news. This was the one that jumped out to me in League One, Wickham. Wickham, according to Sky Sports, have advised their furloughed staff, and these are in American terms, people who are on unemployment but have been staff members of Wickham. I think the way they do the furlough system, it's maybe a little bit different than unemployment here, where it allows you to stay connected to your employer, but you're getting money from the government to pay the employee during the short period of time, and it's not the full amount. They've advised their furloughed staff to look for alternative employment once that government scheme of furlough ends. That government system is the better way to put it here. They are warning of losses in total through this of £2.5 million. Wickham, as a League One club, £2.5 million is a lot of money for them. It's their budget. It's a lot of their budget. They have said that they can no longer afford to make up the salaries to 100%. What that means is the staff members who have been getting money from the government as part of this furlough system, the club has been paying on top of that to make them good for their expected 100% amount of pay. The club's saying that they can't do that going forward. Rob Cohig, he is the chairman. He bought the club in October of 2019. Man, bad timing, Rob. Rob said the club has essentially been without revenue since the beginning of March. Our loss of revenue, even with the utilization of the furlough plan, has exceeded £1 million through the end of May. On a going-forward basis, we anticipate our loss of revenue will continue at the rate of £350,000 a month. While no one really knows for sure when we will be able to return to playing in front of crowds, it seems reasonably certain that it will not happen until September at least, and many speculate not until at least December. It is apparent that the club's losses as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak may exceed £2.5 million. If we are required to play games behind closed doors, whether to try to complete the season or in playoffs, these costs will go up. That is without playing anything else. They're expecting £2.5 million or more. Rob Cohig said, we have informed all our non-football staff presently on furlough that their pay will be limited to that which we receive from the furlough plan. Through May 31st, everyone has received 100% of their pay. The club has made up the difference. Going forward, these furloughed employees will receive 80% of their salary with a maximum payment of £2,500 per month. We are also recommending that they begin the search for alternative employment once furlough ends. They also have a player on loan, right back Jason McCarthy. He is on loan from Fulham. They can't afford him anymore. They said, I have also informed our manager that the club will be without the services of Jason McCarthy. Jason is a wonderful player and a terrific guy. He was on loan to us from Millwall. While they and he were willing to extend the agreement through the remainder of this season, and he would unquestionably be helpful if play resumes in any circumstances, we simply can't afford him. The club will survive this crisis as it has in the past. However, it will only do so by taking hard, necessary steps to deal with the reality of our economic situation. That's a League One team. They have voted against returning to play. I believe they've voted against returning to play playoffs either. They're in 8th in League One right now, which would put them into a position where they could get into a playoff if they finish the season and try to get promoted. They can't afford it. I mean, this is a difference from other teams that we've had things said by about, well, we don't want to play the season. Well, you're trying not to get relegated. Or, yeah, we don't want to finish because you're in first and you're going to go up. You don't care. This is one where it would benefit them as a soccer club on the field to play because they could play their way into the playoffs and try to get promotion. But they're being very clear in saying we can't afford to play. We got to stop. And we're looking at even more losses down the road. That's a League One club. That's the 3rd division in England. So that gives you a little more of a insight, I think, into where these clubs are looking at the moment.
And I think that there was one set of math that could have been considered if the season stopped right now, where Wickham would have pole vaulted some teams, gotten into the playoff picture. But I think that regardless of math, regardless of playoffs, I think that this is, and I applaud Wickham for coming out and saying, hey, here's the deal, instead of trying to not say anything or hide behind numbers or try to come up with something else. I applaud them for doing this to lay it all out for folks. Sadly, I don't think that they're going to be the last to mention something like this, but the fact that they're the first and laying something out, I think that they get a lot of credit from me anyway for saying how dire the situation is for these 3rd division clubs just to keep the lights on, much less have an idea of going out there and finishing a season, being a part of a playoff structure, all that kind of stuff. So kudos to the front office for laying it all out there. I don't think this is the last we're going to hear of something like this, sadly, but Wickham lays it out there for everybody just how difficult it is for them to function right now.
Yeah, Scotland is another one that's having difficulty function, but they're coming up with an interesting way to do this. The TV situations in Europe and especially in the UK are very different than they are here, so I don't know if you could find a way to make this work here for smaller clubs, but the Scottish Premiership season, it's a new deal with Sky Sports going forward, and it will include a virtual season ticket for top-flight clubs. They will create a virtual season ticket for the 2020/21 season, providing an alternative source of matchday income while social distancing measures prevent fans from attending matches. Each Premiership club will be able to sell a package to season ticket holders to watch all home games. So if you were going to buy a ticket, you'd be on all the home games. This will allow you to watch all the home games. I'm assuming from connecting the dots here, because the release from Sky was a little vague, but it might just be us not being consistent with what their plans are in terms of TV offerings. They're doing 48 games live coverage of the SPFL on Sky. I'm assuming all of the other games would then be made available through a streaming setup or through whatever options you have with Sky with your cable provider to watch your team's home games. Neil Doncaster, chief exec for SPFL, he said, "This is an innovative and pragmatic solution to the challenges posed by COVID-19, and I'm grateful for the flexibility shown by our clubs and by Sky Sports. This agreement means that any liability for this is another element too. The money that is due back to Sky for games that were not played in this current season, that's been spread across the new 5-year deal. So it was at the end of the deal. They've signed a new 5-year deal, and they've spread those losses over the 5 years. So they're not giving money back. They're just not quite getting as much over the 5 years as they would have, and it's spread over 5 years. So it's not as much of a dramatic loss as it could have been." And Doncaster said, "This agreement means that any liability for games not delivered during season 19-20 has now been settled on terms that reflect Sky's status as a committed partner and supporter of Scottish football." That's another huge element, because you're not giving a bunch of money back right now when you don't have money to give. You're just spreading a loss over a new deal. That's you can handle that. You can make that work. You're not giving money back right now. You don't have money to give. You're good.
And I want to see how the virtual season ticket lays out.
I don't think it's worth too much here. I think it is basically like Red TV, like a subscription package to watch your home games. Sky's showing 48 games. They're not showing all the games. So the games that Sky is not showing, they're going to make them available to home team fans for a subscription.
I follow whatever and those kinds of things.
Well, just Sky.
Yeah.
It's Sky doing it. So.
Yeah, but along the same lines of and I follow is what I was saying.
Kind of, yeah.
Through Sky.
Should be much better.
Yeah. So Sky's got the bandwidth to handle something like this. So this sounds like right now, out of the blocks, it's a win-win for the Scottish Premiership, and they need a win right now.
Yeah, it should be. Belgium. Belgium is not finishing their season. Belgium is trying to figure out what financial fair play is going to look like going forward, both locally and in the continent. So due to the impact of the coronavirus, the Belgian Pro League, their first division, is going to relax their rules on financial fair play. Losses caused by the coronavirus outbreak could be covered by capital injections. So if you have a wealthy owner, well, hey, you're going to be able to pump some money into the club right now in Belgium to fulfill their financial fair play rules. That's going to help avoid bankruptcies from piling up next season, according to Niels Vlemich at HLN. The way they're going to do this is still trying to be sorted out. The most liberal voices are calling for unlimited matching. They think, others say that you can calculate how much of the, exactly say the crisis caused X amount of loss, and you can replace X amount of loss. Others are saying you can pump on whatever money you need to pump into it. You got to figure that out, because that is a very different situation. If you're going to allow unlimited stuff, then yeah, some clubs could take full advantage and separate themselves from the group, and financial fair play is trying to prevent that. If you're going to say they can put in X amount because you lost X amount, that's following financial fair play. That's following the heart of the financial fair play system. You got to decide it quick, because their financial year ends at the end of June 30th. Capital increases for the current season must occur before that date. So June 12 is when their Pro League is having their General Assembly. They should make some decisions on that. Also, and this is where it could be a bigger step, is this week representatives of the Belgian Pro League are meeting with UEFA to see what they're going to give the sign-off to. That's going to affect what Belgium does, but that could also give us an insight as to what opportunities will be there for other countries to do. There are plans at the European level to temporarily moderate the financial fair play rules. Even clubs from the biggest leagues are under severe financial pressure, as we talked about with Barcelona. If teams from the big countries go down, it threatens to have a snowball effect on the entire football economy. UEFA wants to avoid that at all costs. They're going to have to figure out how to allow owners to supplement clubs right now to make up for losses, which financial fair play does not allow them to do. Sounds like UEFA is open to finding a system to do that. They need to do it ASAP, because you got leagues coming up to the end of the financial year, and they got to know what they can do and what they can't do. We know what's going on with Manchester City. I think that case is actually supposed to be heard this week as well for their breaches of financial fair play rules. This would not get them out of that. Don't get it twisted. They broke the rules that were on the board when they broke them, or they've been alleged to break them, let's say. This would change the rules going forward. I would assume it would change them for a temporary period of time that wouldn't give Manchester City an out. So, other updates quickly. The Netherlands, the Eredivisie, there was some talk they might come back earlier. The Secretary of Health, Welfare, and Sports said, "Nuh-uh, September 1st. You're not coming back to play before September 1st. Portugal, there's talk that they might do centralized TV deals starting in 2028. Portugal, I'm assuming, is a lot like Spain, is to a lesser extent now than it used to be, where teams can do their own deals. What does that mean in Portugal? Benfica gets a lot of money. Sporting gets a good amount of money. Porto gets a good amount of money. Most everybody else gets nothing. Gets limited, gets little. Same with what it was in Spain. Real Madrid's got all the money. Barcelona's got all the TV money. The others get something here and there, depending on their size. A centralized deal allows you to share it more. Do they do a centralized deal and then do like in England where there is a weighted delivery based off where you finish? Probably. It's what the big clubs would fight for. It would make sense for them to do that. In Mexico, it's official now. Morelia is moving. 69 years in Morelia, and Monarcas will be now playing in Mazatlan. That was announced by the club yesterday. In Canada, the Canadian Premier League hub event to get a season of some sort done, or just a tournament. I'm not sure which at this stage. It's going to cost $5.5 million to do it, according to Kurt Larson on Twitter. Larson used to work for the Canadian Premier League. He is with One Soccer now. Anywhere in Canada, they do this. It's going to be $5.5 million. The Canadian Premier League budgets are not large. So $5.5 million to do this, oof. Conversations have also commenced with players who've had their salaries already trimmed by 25%. That's in line with the league's front office staff. So Canada might get something underway. We will see. Hopefully we'll get an announcement on MLS here soon, and we'll know what's going to happen there.
You mentioned what's going on with Liga MX. Tom Marshall also said that he's reading rumors about Querétaro becoming Atlante and moving as well. Yeah, Marshall says it's from his Twitter, not the type of thing you'd usually believe. Surely Querétaro wouldn't be left without a team. But would anyone really be surprised given everything we've seen the last few months? And you mentioned the Monarcas move.
Hold on one sec. Let me give a little more information there. So Atlante is right now in the second division. Atlante was founded in 1916. They're going way back. They're one of the older big clubs in the country. 3 national titles at the league level. They moved to Cancun. They originally were in Mexico City. They moved to Cancun. They're still in Cancun. This would be Atlante's ownership, if I'm reading Tom Marshall's reporting right. Atlante's ownership would basically be buying the license to be a Liga MX club from Querétaro. And I don't know if they're swapping, and then Querétaro would become an Ascenso club. This happens a good bit in Mexico, and it's why the promotion relegation there has been a joke for a while, and I believe Querétaro has been a part of that for a while, or at least involved in one of them. Yeah, 2013 they were supposed to be relegated, but they bought Chiapas and relocated Chiapas to Querétaro to keep them going. So when you look at it, it sounds like it's a new club. So you hear like Atlante is going to buy Querétaro. You're buying basically the sheet of paper that allows you to be in the first division. That's the way you look at it, because Querétaro, their history is still consistent. Like, they were going to be relegated. They bought another team and then moved it. No, that's not really how it went down. They bought that team's license and kept it with their club. So it's not a new club is the way that they look at it. It's not buying and moving a club. Querétaro is one that, yeah, you would expect to be in the first division because they've already went through a situation like this to stay in the first division. If Atlante buys Querétaro, isn't Querétaro going to look to buy somebody else?
Yeah.
Are you going to have a musical chairs of clubs in Mexico? That's where you're at. You were there before the ProRel suspension. You're still there. Nothing's really changed.
Yeah. And also, Jonathan Tannenwald and Tom Marshall also retweeted something from Melina Maline, who has part of NWSL Media, and it has to do with the Monarcas Femenil side. Mm-hmm. And Melina says that Femenil players from Monarcas have been left in the dark, with goalkeeper Diane Garcia explaining on Instagram that they hadn't been informed of developments and many of their contracts ended at the end of May. Melina says this is not all right.
No, it's not. It's obviously not. I don't know the whole situation with Morelia. I don't know what their financial situation has been because theirs is different. What we just talked about with Atlante and Querétaro, it's not the same thing as Morelia is going through. Morelia is moving a first division club to another city. The ownership is moving it. It's not selling a license. They're moving. And they would have the Liga MX Femenil side as well. You've got players out of contract at the end of May. They would be moving as well. You would think you would be having some conversations, but maybe you're not having conversations with players who are out of contract. I don't know. Yeah. Still very poorly handled. The whole thing's been poorly handled across the board. I'm not surprised that the women's team with the club is part of it being handled poorly because they've screwed it up everywhere.
Also, according to Marshall, he says this is not the first time Liga MX clubs have changed locations. We talked about it a little bit. He said Necaxa moved to Aguascalientes. Atlante de Cancun was one that you mentioned. Both clubs were founded in Mexico City.
Yeah, those are like this one. Those are not licenses being moved to avoid relegation. Those are clubs moving cities, which we see in sports. We haven't seen really in a while, but we see it. We haven't seen it across the board in a while. Mexico, it does happen to. Doesn't happen in a lot of places, but yeah, these two countries, it happens.
Have some Premier League stuff. What else is on your mind this morning?
What do you have?
Well, Sean Dyche is pissed.
Doesn't he stay angry?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that his anger might actually go a little more above the standard voice that we hear from Sean Dyche when he's angry.
Oh, jeez.
Might be a little angrier than that. So here's the deal. He's unhappy with the club over their reluctance to extend the contracts of several senior players whose deals expire this month.
Mm-hmm.
5 players out of contract at Turf Moor June 30, including Phil Bardsley and Jeff Hendrick. But the club have so far only offered those 2 one-month extensions to enable them to play until the planned completion date of the Prem on July 26th. Mm-hmm. Dyche is understood to have expressed his frustration to Chairman Mike Garlick and urged the club to reconsider.
Is Dyche going to be able to go out and find some money?
Burnley traditionally has not.
Yeah. And if they didn't have money before, they're not going to be rolling in it right now. And it's kind of hard for a club like that to sign a guy long-term in this situation. Unless you're going to get a really good deal to sign them long-term. No, you're trying to do the extension and you figure it out. And once you kind of know where things fall. What's their situation in the league table?
Safe. They're, middle third, as they always are. They're okay.
So then there's no real pressure for them to worry about it. They can't commit to dollars down the road that they don't know if they're going to have. So I get it. It's not good, but if you don't sign these guys to their extensions, you play some kids. They're not. It's not going to affect their place in the table. It will affect some of the money they'll get in the end, but can you commit to a longer term deal right now? A club like that might not be able to. They just might not be able to.
Yeah, 1-year extensions given to Ashley Westwood, Robbie Brady this year. The only new contracts the club has agreed since November.
Well, that doesn't even tell you anything because if you agreed to a 1-year extension in November or December or January or February, it's a very different conversation than if you agreed to a 1-year extension after the coronavirus outbreak. Mm-hmm. It's 2 different times. I mean, you can't even compare them.
Along those same lines, we have had folks jump in on the Twitters this morning, and Chris Hutchison had a question wondering which games Amazon had. And
I think it's in the UK, so it's not going to be for us.
Yeah, and even if it was for us, it's Tafka. Tafka wanted to know the Amazon matches. Right now, they don't know, but I think that's straight for Amazon
UK. Yeah, that's only for the UK. It's not for us.
And we have had folks also chime in showing their facial hair this morning.
Oh, well, I guess that's good. I'm not alone in growing a beard these days.
No, Nathan Pugh says he has poor and patchy facial hair growth and look infantile without it. Trim and upkeep, but haven't cleanly shaven since college. Beards for the win.
Yeah, I'm down. I mean, like I said, I've always had something. I've just let it grow more.
And Tafka says he hasn't shaved very often. I've spent one day fully clean shaven in the past decade. I've had some length of beard that whole time, except for when I deemed it too dry and started it over entirely. He's had a big beard for 3 or 4 years, and our resident barrister has enclosed a photograph.
Okay, good stuff. We will have a new opus from Tafka coming soon. I have a lot to wade through, so Tafka, chill out. I'll get it up on the website after I can get through it. I might cut it into pieces. I'll see what works on the website. We've redesigned the website a little bit during this, and it's been sporadic putting stuff out because life has been sporadic these days on the website. We will put more towards the website as we get back into action. And Tafka's previous, is it opuses or is it opi?
I would say opi, but it is opuses.
I think it's opuses. His previous opuses will be brought back to the website as we start to post his new ones. So stay tuned for that. And if you guys out there have anything you want to write and want to put it somewhere, give us a heads up. Shoot us a message. Shoot us an email at soccerdownhere on Gmail and let us know. And we'll find a way forward for that, because we have a website. It's where some people listen to the show through that as well. It's where, I'll write some stuff, John will write some stuff, Jarrett and Nick will write some stuff. We want to start doing a little bit more with that side of it. So if you guys want to contribute, give us a heads up.
Michael actually has posted photos. He attended a match at Wickham last year, said to hear their troubles related to COVID, and there are 2 photos of him at Wickham, one holding an Atlanta United scarf above his head.
I think it's good that they're looking at it clearly.
Yeah.
So it's bad to hear that anybody is losing money right now and having to make tough decisions like that, but everybody is. So it's not a surprise that they are in a tough spot. It's better for them to look at it this way, because I think it's more likely that they'll come out of it in a good way. I think it's going to work out because they're being realistic about it. But yeah, it's going to be tough.
Chris Hutchison also says, Lima Gallos Blancos in place.
It's not looking
Liga
good
MX
there.
discussion.
I guess they're going to be in the Ascenso. Turner Kirby also on the beard. He said his grows super fast. Mine doesn't really. He said he ran cross country and track, and he'd shave the night before a race. I was the same way when I played soccer in high school and when I played, just as an adult. I hated to shave on game day.
Yeah.
It was twofold. I mean, it was itchy when I would get sweaty, like it would be itchy if I shaved on game day. But then it became a luck thing for me, so I would not shave on a game day at all. Turner said he grew his out over one summer, shaved before the Peachtree on July 4th, and then didn't shave until their time trial on August 11th. And he said it was the best feeling when he did, because it grows so fast. I haven't shaved like fully since Mexico, since probably right before I went to Mexico. No, since I was in at Mexico. I shaved, I think it was the day before the game at the Azteca, maybe that day, I don't remember. But I have not shaved fully since then. So mine doesn't grow super fast.
Mine really doesn't, period, and it just gets annoying, and that's why I'm like, it's just kind of, you look in the mirror and you're just kind of like, yeah.
Well, it's like the thing that I was, if you're trying to grow your hair out longer, I think everybody gets to that point where you're letting it grow, and it gets to a point where it just looks really stupid because it's in between. Yeah. And most guys, I think, shave their head or cut it short or whatever at that point. When I was in college, I tried to let it grow longer. I tried for the Brian McBride look in the mid-'90s. And if you remember what Brian McBride looked like at that point, he had like longer hair coming over, like shorter, not buzzed, but shorter hair underneath. And he'd wear like a thin headband to keep the hair out of his eyes. I tried that for a couple of months, and it drove me crazy. And that's when I started cutting my hair super short. So now I just shave it off because there's not much to work with anyway, so it's all good. I have more hair on my chin than I do on the top of my head.
Yeah, that's why I always try to face folks square on, because you don't want to see what's going on behind.
Oh, yeah, same here. Chris Ashley says Chris Ashley's been growing his beard out, and the missus hates it. She keeps saying, "You probably need to trim the beard soon, yeah?"
Uh-huh.
He says, "Probably," but he has no plans to trim the beard. He's always had something, but she is not a fan of his current beard.
Gotta be careful.
Sometimes you got to make a statement.
Yeah. And sometimes the statement ends up being wrong.
Well, it depends on how your situation is, John.
Oh, I know, but hey, when the boss says that maybe you should, there's a byproduct there.
Just gonna leave that one alone for you, John. You say the boss for a reason.
I do. That is correct. Let's see. Did you see? Oh, well, since we passed the top of the hour, shouldn't I thank somebody?
Yes. Why don't you thank our good friend and compadre and amigo in Decatur, Georgia, Steve Apolinsky.
Apolinsky and Associates LLC. It's time to catch up with them and say thank you for being a part of everything SDH and the SDH network. And you can reach out to Steve if you're a wrongful death, serious injury lawsuit in need of any kind of consultation or representation. Give him a buzz, 404-377-9191. You can reach out to him shooting him an email personally, Steve, S-T-E-V-E, at a-legal.com, or what you can also do is go to the website, a-legal.com, not send Steve an email, because the second that website pops up, low right-hand corner, Jake from State Farm moment right there.
No, don't do that.
Chat window, 24/7, 365. Find out what whoever is on the other end of the chat is wearing at 3 a.m. Maybe they're wearing khakis. So you can sit there, live chat, aa-legal.com, 404-377-9191 for a free consultation, or just shoot Steve an email, Steve, S-T-E-V-E, at aa-legal.com. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for clients' wrongful death, serious injury in Georgia and Alabama. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine, top 100 lawyers in the state of Georgia. Steve Apolinsky, Apolinsky and Associates, LLC. Proud sponsors of everything soccer down here in the SDH networks at aa-legal.com.
Don't tell people to go to Steve Apolinsky's website at 3 in the morning and ask the person on the other end of the chat window what they're wearing. That's creepy.
Well, if the guy just says khakis, it's a Jake from State Farm moment. That's all.
Don't do it. That's the whole point. You don't go on there at 3 in the morning unless you have a problem. Right. If you're having a problem at 3 in the morning, you might want to go ahead and call and not go to the website.
But then nobody's going to answer at 3 o'clock in the morning, I wouldn't think. That's why you go to the live chat.
I'm going to assume if you have a live chat available that a phone call would get to somebody, and you might be able to talk faster than you type if you have a problem needing Steve's assistance at 3 in the morning. You want to be immediate with this, and you don't want to waste time asking what people are wearing. Just a thought.
All right. I've got a couple of other things in the Premier League that I've stumbled across as well that I've kept in the queue.
What do we got?
Mesut Ozil. Did you hear about this?
I've heard a lot about Mesut Ozil. What now?
Reportedly being dropped by Adidas after 7 years this summer. Had signed a contract worth £22 million back in 2013. Adidas are said to have concerns over Ozil's public image following controversy. So he could be without a boot sponsor after Adidas decided not to renew the contract, according to Bild magazine.
He's been all over the place, and I don't know if it's down to statements he's made. I don't know if it's down to the fact that I don't know if a boot sponsor would be ponying up a lot of money for him at this point, because I'm trying to remember the last time we were talking about Mesut Ozil's play on the field in a very positive way. It's been a while. I think it's probably a big picture conversation here. I don't think it's one thing or another, but yeah, Ozil has really fallen off. The move to Arsenal just has not ever worked out, truly. And he's a very talented player. I mean, the issues he had with the German Federation and relating to the German national team didn't help anything. It's just felt like one thing after another. But the most important thing is he's not playing a whole lot, and he's not doing a whole lot when he's playing. and that's going to be the biggest issue.
Yep. Quit the German national team in 2018. Ozil's public image said to be one of the major factors behind Adidas' decision. Quit the German national team after claiming he'd been made a scapegoat for their World Cup failure in Russia. He also had said in weeks leading up to the tournament, according to the Daily Mail, when he was pictured alongside Turkish President Erdogan in London. Erdogan described as a modern-day dictator. This is the Daily Mail's words. Özil, who has Turkish roots, was also heavily criticized for having Erdogan as his best man at his wedding last June.
Yeah, and you add that on top of the soccer performance, and companies might keep their distance.
It looks like Liverpool and Newcastle might be added to the neutral venue list.
Why Newcastle? Liverpool was already on the list. They're not being added to the neutral venue list.
But that particular matchup.
Oh, that particular. Well, Liverpool was already on it, though. So, I mean, I'm not surprised.
So, adding.
I think Liverpool, all of their matches were being talked about in this.
And so, yeah, I just. Daily Mail says that the Liverpool-Newcastle match might be added to the neutral venue.
Where was it supposed to be played?
At. What's Newcastle's.
What are you flipping your arms around for?
I'm trying to remember the name of Newcastle's stadium.
St. James Park?
Thank you, St. James.
Okay. Newcastle fans, probably not as much of a concern. Traveling Liverpool fans could be. I think, at least in some reports I've read, all Liverpool games were potentially going to be thrown to neutral sites, not just home Liverpool matches. So we'll see how it ends up shaking out. Newcastle's got a lot of issues on their own right now. They are basically rudderless at this point because they are trying to be purchased, and that is being held up, and that is going to be held up even more with the reporting that we had last week about the alleged piracy of Premier League games and other properties by a Saudi broadcaster. And the World Trade Organization is going to come out and say that they did know about it and they were assisting it. And that's going to make it very hard, on top of everything else with this bid, for the Premier League to accept this purchase. But the problem is right now, Newcastle basically is just floating along. They have, according to some reports, they have, I think 442 had some of this, they haven't refunded anybody yet for games missed, which that is still being sorted out and what those games look like, so I somewhat get that. But they've already started charging people for next season, and there have been questions asked by supporters, and they're not getting any answers. It just feels like everything's on autopilot right now for Newcastle, so the league's got to figure out something about this ownership change like now, because if they don't, this is only going to get worse with this autopilot situation. And with that World Trade Organization report that is supposed to be made public later this month, but is available to the Premier League right now as they make their decision, I don't see how they approve it.
Yeah, no, I don't either. And the whole piracy issue was what you and I thought was going to be the decider here. If it could be determined that piracy was figured out through Saudi Arabia, then
you're out.
Yeah, that's you're out, as opposed to the human rights element.
Because you couldn't make a distinction on the human rights side because of some of the other owners you've got in the organization already. You couldn't go down that road really as the Premier League. You can easily go down the piracy road. Turner asks about Liverpool matches being moved back to Anfield if they clinch the title early on the restart. I haven't seen any clarification on that element of it. I think they are really concerned about Liverpool matches and drawing fans, period.
Yeah.
And there was some questions about this as to why there's this concern that people wouldn't follow directions and, not go to these stadiums and not try to gather outside, not listen to advice from the government, from the local authorities, from the clubs. And they said, what do they think? Football clubs are animal, or football fans are animals, et cetera, et cetera. They're not in Germany, but from day one in this has been the question in England. And this has been beyond a question. It's been to the point that they're like, we can't play some of these games in their home venues. It's not going to be safe. that's a different approach. That's a different mentality. And I don't know if that's just a reaction to Liverpool winning a title for the first time in the Premier League, if it's just because of that, if it's because of specific things with these clubs, I don't know. But yeah, it's been a different conversation about neutral venues, fans gathering in England as it's been in some other countries.
Here's the Liverpool schedule for the run-in.
Okay.
And remember, they only need 2 wins to clinch. First one is Merseyside at Goodison Park. Second one is home to Crystal Palace. That would be the one where they could clinch. After that, at the Etihad to take on Manchester City, home to Villa, at Brighton, home to Burnley, at Arsenal, home to Chelsea, and then Newcastle was the season finale at St. James.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if all of those are going neutral. And I think that's the answer to, as Turner points out, they could clinch in that first one if Manchester City loses. But I think that answers Turner's question about the later games. If they're already looking at Liverpool-Newcastle on the last day being a neutral site game, then they're looking at all of them. They're not looking at while the title's in play. They're looking period. So, again, I don't know if that's just something they don't think Liverpool fans will follow directions. I don't know. It sounds like it, but there's other games, too, that they're looking at. It's just, why can't they get the messaging out to make this not happen? I don't know what that problem is.
Can I ask a question? And I know that this is probably somewhat rhetorical when we're dealing with Liverpool here.
I'm scared. Go ahead.
No, just where has Jurgen Klopp been in all of this?
He said some things. He hasn't been out in front of this element,
and that's what I'm getting at. It's where, if you would think that someone who is held in such high regard by the Liverpool fan base, by all of the Liverpool supporters, I would think that he should be front and center this entire time.
I've got
said
a statement. James Pierce, who writes for The Athletic about Liverpool. This was Klopp to BN Sports. I heard there is some talk about neutral venues, in parentheses. I'm pretty sure we can solve the situation here in Liverpool. I heard a day ago a really good phrase. We have the best home fans in the world, and now we need the best stay-at-home fans in the world. That was May 29th. I haven't seen anything else specifically around that.
Okay, so that was to be in sport. Why not say those things to local media? Post it on the Liverpool website. You've got to hit the locals hard. Just because you talk to B in sport doesn't mean A, everybody's watching. B, everybody can watch it. And C, hit it locally. Great. You're talking on an international channel. Fantastic. To an international audience. What about your locals? You got to remind these folks, stay at home. Great. Be the stay-at-home fans. Make that messaging localized. Yeah, the fans that are Liverpool fans here, Nathan Pugh, last time I checked, Nathan, are you going to fly over and go see the clinching match? You may very well. That message that he put on BN Sport is for Nathan. You need to do that. You need to hit it, if not harder, infinitely harder locally, instead of just sitting here and having that one thing said about neutral venues and admitting that, we'll have a parade when we have a parade. But hit it locally. Hit it hard. I haven't seen it, and that's why I'm confused.
Okay, so a couple of things to catch up on this. BBC Radio 5 Live said that there's no objections from Merseyside police for Liverpool and Everton to happen in Liverpool, and there's no objections for any Liverpool home games to happen in Liverpool. This is from Merseyside police. Mm-hmm. Wembley has emerged as a likely venue for the Merseyside derby for Manchester City versus Liverpool. It's not just Liverpool, so understand that. It's not just Liverpool that's in part of this. This is... Okay, the Athletic... Did this just hit? Are we really, on top of this? Is this just going up earlier today? Okay, bunch of contributors: Simon Hughes, Matt Slater, James Pierce, Patrick Boylan, Laurie Whitwell. It's Liverpool's chances of winning title on Merseyside raised by neutral venue confusion. All right, so this was posted a little while, or it was posted yesterday, late yesterday. The prospect of all remaining Premier League matches being concluded as home and away fixtures has increased amid confusion over why neutral venues were ever proposed and uncertainty about who would ultimately make that decision. So this is running counter to the Daily Mail thing from earlier today.
Okay.
Police guidance originally suggested up to 6 games: Manchester City, Liverpool; Manchester City, Newcastle; Manchester United, Sheffield United; Newcastle, Liverpool. So that was always on the list. Everton, Liverpool, and the game in which Liverpool could secure the title. So whatever game that turned out to be. Those would be played at alternative grounds on the recommendation at the time. This is originally the recommendation of the head of United Kingdom's football policing unit, Mark Roberts. So last Friday, the Premier League reaffirmed its commitment to playing in each home club stadium as planned. There had been a statement released from Mark Roberts, the head of the football policing unit, that a consensus had been reached about using neutral sites. The Athletic learned, and they reported this late yesterday, of the lack of support for the neutral site plan among associated powers as well as those with influence inside football. So this is that all that going into one pot here. That's improved the chances of neutral venues being used as a backup, not as the primary. Premier League meeting on Thursday to decide these things. So we'll know more tomorrow about this, but we're getting all kinds of conflicting information, basically, is what it comes down to. It looks like the neutral site stuff has no consensus to go forward, but it could be used as a backup if there are then concerns about things as they emerge. And that's where we're at with the neutral site. So right now, on paper, they're not doing it. But Thursday is where we will get the information. The Liverpool Echo has written about this as well, and it's basically the same thing, following up on those statements. So the question on that Liverpool-Newcastle match, it was always on the list, but now it is being talked about it because of issues with Newcastle fans marking the takeover, which might happen or might not, and the end of Mike Ashley's ownership. So I think they're worried about issues on that side with that match, but it was already on the list before, so I don't know. And the list might not matter anyway. So.
Yeah. No, I could completely understand the notion of Newcastle fans turning St. James upside down, one reason or another, still mad about Mike Ashley or celebrating the end of Mike Ashley. That could be a wild scene for the last day of the regular season if the home match is there. I could definitely understand that both ways.
And I said the Daily Mail, it was the Mirror that had the report from Mark Jones today about that Liverpool-Newcastle match. He talked about the issues on the Newcastle side. So Mark Jones is also saying that the takeover is expected to be announced by the Premier League, which I have some serious questions about.
Yeah.
Police in Newcastle have expressed concerns that Newcastle fans could head to the game to toast the end of the unpopular owner. There's been hashtags, there's been things trying to coordinate this stuff. So the police are worried about the Newcastle fans with that match. That's changed. It was on the original list of games that could go neutral, but now it's for a different reason. That's where we're at.
You had mentioned the transfer window and difficulties. Someone in the Premier League addressed the idea of the transfer window. Jose Mourinho gave his thoughts.
What did he have to say?
The wallflower that is Jose Mourinho. He says, telling Sky, it is normal you're going, and I wish I could do a Jose Mourinho. It is normal you're going to have a different market. I don't see the world, especially the football world, ready for some crazy numbers we used to have. The first questions after that will be, when will be the transfer window? I don't think it will be in July or August anymore. It has to go further than that. I would like my club to be what I know what will be sensible, balanced, and not going to spend rivers of money. We are trying to respect the situation, not just the football, but the situation in the world and society overall. But it is the last thing we are thinking. We are not thinking about it. There are no talks about it. We think about safety and following every rule.
Okay.
He added, honestly, since the moment Bundesliga started, the Portuguese League and the Spanish League announced a date to start, I think it's the most difficult moment for us because we want to play. It is hard to see other countries playing football, and we don't do it.
The salaries, the transfers, all of it is going to reflect the new financial realities. There's just no other way around it. How much? How fast? I don't know. I think we're all guessing. We're all taking some guesses on what that could mean and what that could do. I don't know if Jose Mourinho knows any more than the rest of us at this point. The window portion of it, I think we're starting to get a little more understanding of what some leagues are wanting to do with it. You know, we talked about the Netherlands yesterday. They want to have a short window open when it was supposed to, but then have most of the window open when everybody else is. You take England's schedule as an example. They're not planning on ending their season until the end of July. That would mean the window would open in August. It could be open for 3 months, 12 weeks. And is that the plan? Is it going to not open immediately in August? Is it going to open at the end of the Champions League, Europa League run? So is it going to open at the end of August, the beginning of September? When's the next season going to start? How does everybody else play off of this? I'm guessing right now, UEFA's best way forward would be to remove the 12-week situation, period. Teams leagues who are out of play, who are done for the season, and leagues who join that list, like Germany will be done fairly early versus England, versus Spain, versus potentially Italy. When you're finished, your window opens. Because I think you've already got enough deals that were planned. You got guys that were going to be out of contract that have already signed deals. You already had some transfers that are agreed to. So I think you have to open it at that point, but I think you have to leave it open like it's opening when the European season ends, which right now that plan is to end at the end of August. So when the Champions League final happens, that should mark the end of the 1920 UEFA calendar. The transfer window needs to be open for everybody the next day. And you're going to see some leagues that are going to start September 1, as some are talking about, which would be a couple days later. And it needs to be open for leagues like that already, but it needs to be also open for an extended period of time in whatever off-season we have. You can't fall back on the old way of doing it because it's a different calendar, it's a different situation altogether. So remove the 12-week restriction, let it be open for leagues when their season ends, make sure it's open for everybody when the European season ends, and then set a hard date after that. If you want to set it as the end of October or even middle of November, I don't know. And does that mean that you're going to be able to make a bunch of signings during the early portion of your season? Yep. And do teams probably need that flexibility right now? Yep. Because you might have some fans in the stands by that point, and that's going to change your budgeting a lot. So I think it needs to be as open-ended as possible right now. And UEFA needs to think outside the box on it, and in turn, FIFA needs to think outside the box on it and make it work for everybody.
Katie Weaver has an NWSL question. I want to get to that in a second.
Okay.
Monday marked the 10-year anniversary of Steve Parrish being in charge of Crystal Palace.
Okay.
And he was asked about the managers that have come into Selhurst Park, and he addressed Frank de Boer's time at Crystal Palace.
Okay.
Frank de Boer, he said after Tony Pulis and Sam Allardyce, Frank de Boer reflected Parrish's own desire for something more sublime in Palace's football. Quote, "Maybe I was just a bit bored of watching us not have the ball. But when you have to get more points out of fewer games in the Premier League, it's better if you can keep the ball, look after the ball. The problem resided in de Boer's conviction that the entire style could be transformed overnight. Parrish says, I now know that takes 2 years."
Well, who is Steve Parrish? Let's go ahead and make that clear for people who don't know who he is.
It's the chairman of Crystal Palace.
There we go. He made the decision to bring Frank de Boer in. He also made the decision to pull the plug in 6 weeks. Yeah, it takes more than 6 weeks to turn a team's style around. I think that's an obvious one. It probably takes longer when you're talking about turning the style around from Tony Pulis and Sam Allardyce to something resembling the game that we know of as soccer, where you're not afraid of the ball. You don't think it has cooties. So, yeah, I mean, what Steve Parrish is saying here is true. I mean, he wanted to have Crystal Palace play a more modern, a more expansive version of the sport. Something that we've seen here in Atlanta, something that we saw at Ajax. Inter had its own issues that were different than what happened at Crystal Palace, and that was also Frank's first job outside of the Netherlands, and it was tough. I mean, he's talked about it. He's talked about one of the things he likes about here versus Inter was that at Inter he had to do everything because it was so dysfunctional and so messed up, and agents had so much power and control. Here, he gets to coach. He gets to do what he does. Crystal Palace would have been closer to that, but Crystal Palace was also a toxic situation. They couldn't risk stepping backwards for 2 steps forwards. That's part of the conversation. But when you made the decision to go hire him, you knew you were transforming it, and you didn't give him the time to transform it. And that has to be on Steve Parrish. And that has to be also on the club as a whole. If it takes 2 years, well, you have to be in a position to where you feel like, and this gets back to the financials of the game, that you can stay up during that time. You're not going to get relegated, but the payoff is going to be at the end of the 2 years or 6 months or 12 months or 18 months that you are in a better position than you started. I think Crystal Palace has been treading water for all of this time. And he wanted that to not be the case, but he got scared when the treading water became a little more difficult because you're trying to do something different. So
Parrish continued. He says, I would take as much of the blame as anybody. I just brought in investment from New American business partners. Everyone had a bit of input into it, whereas usually I would just pick the manager. Everybody wanted to be a bit adventurous, and I understood that. We ended up seeing too many people and got in a muddle. I felt for Frank. He's a really good man, but it was difficult. I remember him talking to me about signing a player in the championship. I said, Frank, I don't know what to say to you. You played 130 times for Holland, the greatest football team that ever walked the planet. You are in the all-time top 11 of that team. You won every major title there is, but honestly, I don't know how you think that player is going to help us. The problem was what he valued in a player was borderline useless for us as a team at that point in the Premier League, and what he didn't value were qualities that he needed, so it was very difficult.
So, okay. Now, this is a very important element here because he is taking some of the blame for the decision, but he is also saying that it wasn't his decision to bring Frank in. Because he talks about the investment they brought in, people wanting to be adventurous. He's separating himself from wanting to be adventurous. So he is not standing by the decision to bring Frank in. He is also, and this last part I think is very reflective of what he sees Crystal Palace as. what they've been, what they are. So it wasn't him being adventurous. It was some of the investors wanting better soccer, a better style. We can always debate what's better, what's worse about style. I think it's much better to be a team that wants the ball. I think it's better. He's kind of halfway saying that at the beginning, but this is where the true colors come out. Because he's telling Frank, who is looking at a player who is good in Frank's mind, period. He is saying that he's a championship player. He can't help us. And he's saying that the players Frank thinks will help him play the style that Steve Parrish is halfway committed to, but not really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Steve Parrish doesn't think they're good enough players. That's reflective of where a club like Crystal Palace is. Because how many times have we seen a player step up from a lower division and make it? Happens all the time. How many times have you seen a player come up from a lower division and not be able to make it? It happens all the time. Steve Parrish is coming after John right now with a leaf blower, it sounds like.
Yeah, the backyard again.
Yeah. We've seen this happen on both sides, but if you have a player you value, and especially you have a player that you value for specific things, it's not about where they're coming from. If they're a championship player, but they can play, and they can play what you want, and they fill a need that you have, you want them. And if that conversation truly happened, well, that's going to ruin the relationship. If you're telling somebody who, maybe it didn't happen in that way, maybe this is Steve Parrish's internal conversation about, well, Frank knows the game, Frank was one of the best players ever, but this player's no good to us. Well, then you don't trust your manager. Right. And you don't trust his ability to tell you what players he needs. And that's never going to work. It sounds like Steve Parrish was never 100% behind the deal.
Yeah.
And he's complimenting Frank, and he's saying good things, and he's kind of halfway taking some blame, but he was never all in on the deal because ultimately, in his mind, like probably a lot of clubs in a situation, Crystal Palace is not an elite club. They're not going to be an elite club. It doesn't matter what they do stylistically, so they have to scrap to stay up at all times. They can't take any risks. They can't look at a player from a lower division thinking maybe they can make it. They have to go get the retread down the street who couldn't cut it at the last team that got relegated. They have to bring them in because, well, they're a Premier League player. Well, they were on a team that got relegated, but they're a Premier League player. We can't take a chance on anything that isn't that. And you are stagnant, and that's what you are. And that's what Crystal Palace is. I mean, you're going to have a year where they hop up into 8th, 9th, 10th. They're going to have a year where they fall down into a relegation scrap, but basically they're going to be a 13th or 14th placed club.
Yeah.
And if that's what they are and they have no ambition to be anything else, I don't ever want to hear anybody tell me that, well, if you don't have promotion relegation, you don't have ambition, or if you're in MLS, you don't have ambition, or you're a team that is scared to sign a player that your manager thinks will improve your team, and you're a team that is okay with being mediocre in the first division, but mediocre. You are playing for nothing every season, basically. You are just playing games to play games. Have fun.
Yeah. Parrish says, with an investment from American co-owners, the club is the 10th longest-serving club in the Premier League, and they're looking to make a $75 to $100 million main stand extension. Parrish believes it could increase annual matchday revenues by up to £25 million when crowds return. It's the financial bracket with clubs like Everton, Newcastle, Villa, West Ham, and Leeds we want to hit.
Didn't say anything about wanting to be a competitive team on the field, did they?
No, he mentions financial brackets. He doesn't mention...
and that's fine. That's fine. It's a business. But, again, don't give me a bunch of nonsense about, well, it's all about the game, and MLS isn't about the sport and all this stuff. Stop your nonsense. Also, good subtweeting by Parrish there to throw the American owners under the bus about wanting the adventurous stuff. Yeah, that was not by accident either. Yeah, Crystal Palace, enjoy your 13th,
Average.
14th place. No, not even average, because average would be 10th. You're below average. You have no ambition. You don't want to do anything different, and you want to be boring. Have
Fair to
fun.
Midland?
Sorry,
Vanilla?
Crystal Palace fans. Your club has no ambition.
Maybe they should just change from red and blue to having a vanilla-colored kit.
Maybe we should just be beige.
Beige.
Just
I like
beige.
that. Beige.
Welcome to Crystal Palace. We are the beige.
You've got cheerleaders and an eagle, but you're beige.
Beige.
All right, Katie Weaver's NWSL question.
Okay.
And she admits to being behind on her soccer news.
It's okay. We all are.
Can you clarify the position of the USWNT players on the Utah tourney and what the definition of a USWNT player is? Anyone who's capped, whoever last went to camp, hashtag Wildpass Wednesday.
Well, yeah, it's a little weird, and I don't have all the answers on this. They haven't made all their decisions. I believe some managers have said they're expecting all their players to participate. They haven't had to define that just yet. Some managers have said that all their players have not decided yet. And this is NWSL and USMNT or WNT players, everybody. They haven't all decided if they're going to go yet. So they haven't got to that point. This has been treated a little bit like it's separate. Like players who are, I believe, part of the NWSL PA and the USWNT PA. That's the part I don't know who's part of that. I don't know if you have a cap, you can join the U.S. Women's National Team Players Association, or if there's a certain level of caps or level of performance. And I don't know if you get bumped out if you don't meet that level of performance. A player like McCall Zerboni, for example, who has been in the team but then wasn't part of the World Cup roster, does she get pushed out of the USWNT PA? What I do know is that the allocated players for the 2020 season was announced, and Stars and Stripes FC, the SB Nation Network, had this a while ago. These are the players whose salaries are paid by their federations. Now, we've talked about salary with the women's national team. This is not their women's national team salary. This is their NWSL salary on top of their women's national team salary in those situations. But the federation pays for these allocated players for their NWSL play. So 23 U.S. players on the list. And I think it's a very safe assumption that all of these players would be part of the U.S. Women's National Team PA and potentially would be part of that discussion about not playing. For the Chicago Red Stars, Morgan Bryan, Tierna Davidson, Julie Ertz, Alyssa Nair, Casey Short. This was announced February 20th, by the way. Houston Dash did not have any. North Carolina Courage, Abby Dahlkemper, Crystal Dunn, Samantha Mewis. Orlando Pride, Ashlyn Harris, Allie Krieger, Alex Morgan, Emily Sonnet. Portland Thorns, Adriana Franch, Tobin Heath, Lindsay Horan. Rain FC, or OL Rain now, Allie Long, Megan Rapinoe. Sky Blue, Carly Lloyd, Mallory Pugh. Utah Royals, Kelly O'Hara, Kristen Press, Becky Sauerbrunn. Washington Spirit, Rose Lavelle. The two new allocated players were Tierna Davidson and Allie Krieger. When they were added to that list, that gave you some speculation that maybe they were going to be part of the Olympic roster going forward. Andy Sullivan, Lynn Williams, not part of it, and they've been part of the national team. Are they part of the national team PA? Maybe. Allie Long was part of it here. Doesn't look like she's going to be part of Latko Andonovski's teams going forward, so maybe that's a question. I don't know how that falls with the national team PA. Casey Short would be another one because she hasn't been much of the national team going forward. So that's the list of allocated players that the Federation pays. There's a ton of overlap between the national team there, but not 100%. So all of these players, with maybe the additions of an Andy Sullivan, a Lynn Williams, would be part of that question about women's national teams players playing in this. I think it would be a shame for anybody to skip it for a non-medical reason. And I think it'd be hurting the league. I understand that national team players, as we talked about, don't have to go. Nobody has to go, first off. It's not going to affect anybody's salary. The NWSL made sure that was part of it. The NWSLPA made sure that was part of it. If you don't want to play in this, it's not going to affect your standing. If top players who are paid by the federation to play in the NWSL, but also paid by the federation to play for the national team, and are in a completely different financial situation than your average NWSL player, if they just opt not to go because they don't want to go, it's a bad look. This is a big event for the NWSL. And first off, you have to give the sponsors credit for contributing to it with that in question. I don't believe any of the sponsorship is contingent on Carly Lloyd playing or Megan Rapinoe playing or any other stars of the national team. But they're committing to do it. This is going to grow the league. If there is not a reason not to play, and it's this is where it's hard because you're asking players to justify not going to play in this event, that yes, there are risks. There's risks for all of us going to the store every day. There's risks for athletes to go back. They have more testing than your average person. I think there's protocols to show that you're not seeing spread in team sport situations if protocols are followed. But if they just opt not to go, they can point to that, and it's hard to question it. But if your average rank and file NWSL player who is not making anywhere near the same amount as a national team player goes to play in this, and national team players decide not to, I don't think it's a good look. I don't think it's a good look at all, and I'm really curious to see what the lists end up looking like. Paul Riley with the North Carolina Courage has said all of his players are going to play. I don't think that's a commitment yet because there hasn't been a roster list submitted. Some others have said that they expect all their players to play. Others have said we don't know yet. So we will see. But I was, and the reason why I'm a little concerned and hesitant about this is I didn't really like how the return to play went down for everybody coming back from the World Cup last year. It was for some very slow to get back to NWSL play, more so than others. And that's, again, where the questions come. When you have some players who jump straight back into the league and play, they're showing a commitment to the league. And when others don't, are they really committed to the league? And the league needs that commitment to grow. So this is a big opportunity for the NWSL. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs. As has been said about this, the matches on CBS, that first match, which we would expect to be the Portland, North Carolina match on the first day of the NWSL tournament, that is going to be the first professional women's club soccer match on broadcast TV ever in the United States. Ever. This is a big, big deal. And these are two teams that would be part of it that your average person might not know Crystal Dunn as well, might not know Tobin Heath or Lindsey Horan as well. They're not Megan Rapinoe, they're not Alex Morgan, they're not Carly Lloyd in terms of Q ratings. But if you're missing the best of these teams in that game, which is a showcase for the league, it would be a huge, sad thing. And I hope it doesn't happen. I hope that everybody involved in this realizes the opportunity that's at hand and participates. If they can't because of health issues, because of other situations, we're having a completely different conversation. If they don't want to, it hurts. It hurts the league. And I hope that doesn't happen.
More from the Twitters this morning. Nathan Pugh. He says, happy 128th birthday to Liverpool, although he did not have an Up the Reds notification with this particular tweet. He says he thought Barco would leave this summer, and now he's guessing January. PT, no idea. Any chance Miles tries to skedaddle on a wall past Wednesday?
I think Miles will be in demand, absolutely. The reason why I don't think Miles will go anywhere yet is he hasn't truly broken into the national team. And I think he would have this year if this hadn't happened. So maybe Miles's move slows down a little bit. But I think Miles will go eventually. I don't even want to put timelines on it because I don't know. I mean, Pitti, Barco, Miles are 3 players. George Bello I would put into this conversation as well, who have a lot of ability now, a lot of upside. Even Pitti is as older as the rest of the group. I think all of them have upside. All of them have abilities to help teams now. And will they get a look? I think they would have got a look before. Will they get a look now? I do think so, but I don't know where the dollars fall. And that's what makes this tricky. And it's what makes it tricky across the board for the players too, because salaries are going to fall too. I think when we talk about the transfer market, a lot of it is zeroing in on the transfer fee, but the salaries are not going to be what they were before. So that changes the conversation all the way around, and you've got players who, like Ezequiel Barco, were purchased for a large amount of money, and you'd like to get a return on that. Well, you're in a different world now, so you might not get the $30 million that I think was kind of the target price here to double your transfer fee. But to go along with that, if you can't get that, the club might be a little more reluctant to sell a player in that situation because the player might be expecting a bigger paycheck on the other side. They might not get that paycheck on the other side more than what they're getting here. So that changes maybe even the push to go. Also, you're going to have some leagues step back from where they were before. You're going to have some leagues step up. MLS, I do think, is a league that can step up in ranking. And if you're talking about an Ezequiel Barco going to Portugal versus staying in MLS, I don't think that makes any sense anymore. If you're talking about him going to France outside of PSG, maybe, I don't know if that makes any sense anymore. Going to Italy, a little bit different conversation. Going to England, different conversation because the TV money's still going to be really good in England. But I think the market is going to look so different that it's way too early to predict what Barco's market is, what Pitti's market is. Pitti would be bought to come in and help put a team over the top. Barco would be bought for potential and to contribute now. Miles would be more for contributing now, but some growth potential. Bello would be growth potential with a little bit of helping now. And all of those paradigms are going to be completely different in this new world we're in, so we have to wait and see.
Nathan, also, when we were getting into the neutral site discussion with Liverpool and Newcastle at the end of the Premier League calendar, says that a Liverpudlian would tell you it's because folks in London are Tory and have a natural bias and animosity towards Scousers and Northerners. There are old wounds.
Scousers.
Okay.
Scousers.
Well, okay, because the Monkey song was... All right!
It's Scousers. You don't know this. It's Scousers.
Well, the Monkey song was Randy Scouse Git.
What? What monkey? What are you talking about?
There's a Monkey song from the 60s that was spelled the same. Randy Scouse Git was how it was pronounced.
I've always heard Liverpool fans and folks from Liverpool called Scousers. Like,
fine!
It's just part of the soccer conversation.
Fine!
You're telling the monkeys to define it.
And I went to a Monkeys reference because that's what I heard.
The Monkeys? Come on, man.
Mickey Dolenz, yes. Randy Scouse Git.
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
Shocker. Fine. Carl Segge can come at me, and Nathan Pugh can come at me.
Oh, what's Carl Segge coming at you for?
Newcastle in general.
Oh, okay. What did I didn't know. I didn't know you had people coming after you, John. I'm sorry.
I'm just after mispronouncing Scousers. Apparently, I'm anticipating it.
Yeah, you might have these games moved to neutral venues because you're mispronouncing what they're called by people who
come
call
out
them
to the
things.
backyard here at Office HD.
You could get a leaf blower
and have Steve Parrish in a leaf blower.
Don't trust the monkeys for pronunciation anymore.
No shit.
Good job there, buddy.
All right, and so then I was calling out his redness as well, Nathan Pugh's. So, and Chris Hutchison has another color suggestion for the Crystal Palace jerseys.
Yes,
taupe.
Yeah, that would work. As long as they're like sponsored by Vanilla Wafers, we'll be good to go.
Yep. So that would be, and so Chris Hutchison is now suggesting that I take the last train to Clarksville.
See, now when this happens, I'm like, man, I need to double check and make sure that I'm not losing my mind hearing Scousers over and over again. You're basing all the monkeys. That's funny.
You better hit the breaking news sounder.
Okay, good. We needed something different. All right. What is the breaking news, John Nelson?
From Tenorio. Quoting Tenorio, MLS is coming back. And Stejkal in Tenorio. MLSPA voted Tuesday night, Wednesday morning to approve the latest return-to-play plan negotiated with Major League Soccer. MLSPA announced Wednesday morning that the vote passed and the new collective bargaining agreement had been ratified by the players and league owners. Opening paragraph.
Well, there you go. And this was updated this morning. Let's see. Yeah, it's all coming, so... stay on the lookout at The Athletic, Paul Tenorio on Twitter for more updates. But, yep, everything has been approved as we expected once we got that clarification on force majeure, which we've learned a lot about over the last few days, and media rights sharing and percentages being worked through. And, yeah, it didn't feel like it was that far apart. That's why the lockout threat really felt out of place. It's a bump in the road, a big one. They've got to fix now going forward just with the relationship. But, yeah, you're going to come back and play. You're going to do this in Orlando. What I want to hear now is the Orlando part of it. How is that going to help the league in 2020? We've talked about it all the way through. Like the Orlando situation, when it was created, it was the only way to come back to play. You weren't going to be able to have teams play games in market. Well, over this whole process, that's changed for the most part, but it's changed a lot. Is there a benefit to doing this in Orlando? Are you saving money? Are you cutting costs? Are you getting a new, stronger relationship with one of your TV partners, which is potentially going to be a very important thing going forward when you go into media rights negotiation? Have there maybe been some... hey, if you do this for us, we're going to do this for you later on. That's an important part of selling this as why you're doing it, because it's different. It's different. The Bundesliga didn't go down this road. No other leagues are going down this road. What are the benefits? And I know MLS isn't in a position where they want to tell us, look, we're going to lose a lot of money this year, and this is going to help mitigate that. Can you spin it to where you're selling us that, but not coming from a position of weakness? Can you tell us, because of doing this event in Orlando, ESPN is going to pay us more money, ESPN is going to commit to a longer-term deal, or get a first right of refusal, or whatever, or cut the costs of doing these games, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I'd like to hear going forward. So we'll see what happens. But, yes, the MLSPA has approved the plan on the table. The CBA has been agreed to and ratified, and MLS will be back very soon.
There you go. So did you come up with the independent confirmation that I had malapropped Scousers?
I'm working on it. Let's see what the American pronunciation, according to Google, says.
Scouser.
See? You want to hear it again?
Scouser.
Uh-huh. One more time for you, John.
Scouser.
Okay.
I blame
let's hear the British pronunciation to see how that goes.
Scouser.
Okay.
Okay.
Scouser.
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 All right. So, here in the United States,
Scouser.
not the monkeys, it is this.
Scouser.
Okay. Yes.
Mazel tov.
Yes, hon. More Hot Pockets.
Ooh, Hot
know,
Pockets. It's not a bad idea.
I don't know if it's a good idea.
Nick has let us know something out of Football Italia before we go.
Okay.
Dennis Rodman has praised Andrea Patania calling the Spal striker a bulldozer, urging him to keep doing what you're doing in a video.
Okay. Well, hey, Dennis Rodman's daughter is one of the top up-and-coming talents in the U.S. women's national team system. So he's paying attention to this stuff. I did not expect him to be paying attention to Spal and their strikers that are not the most well-known, but good on you, Dennis Rodman.
He says, I've got a daughter named, he says, but I got something for you right now, Andrea. I got a daughter named Trinity Rodman. She's the #1 soccer player in the world right now. Come on, man, look her up. One of these days, you're going to face her, and one of these days, you're going to text me back and say, Dennis, you know what? You're right. She's good, just like me. She's a bulldozer, but she's a Rodman. Respect, respect, respect. Keep doing what you're doing, courtesy of our friends at Football Italia.
So he was praising the striker at Spal, Andrea Patania.
Mm-hmm.
And he was using the praise as a way to hype up his daughter, Trinity Rodman, who
I believe that is accurate, yes.
19 now and is headed to Washington State.
Interesting.
Washington State's got a growing program. This was announced in December. Top-rated prospect in program history. I think she was originally going to go to UCLA. Yep, she had previously committed to UCLA. Going to Washington State instead. I think her brother is at Washington State, and when she went up to visit, she was really just, loving the campus, loving the situation there. And, she's a top player in the youth national team pools. So I would love to see soccer dad Dennis Rodman involved in U.S. soccer. I would be all in on this.
Must-see viewing for the Pac-12 network.
Across the board. Put him on a mic, please. Just a 7-second delay. But put him on a mic. I'm in.
Let's see. What else is on your mind? Because I have a promo, and I know you've got other stuff to do.
You have a promo? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have...
Because I imagine your business just picked up today.
Well, it could be. Definitely that. We've got this. If I can find it now. Why did that come up? Okay. Man, there's a million things happening at one time. Mm-hmm. And the computer is overloading. All right, so the MLSPA 8 minutes ago tweeted out a statement. MLS players today ratified a new collective bargaining agreement which will run through the 2025 season. So this is not just the return to play, to be clear. This is the full CBA that had been agreed to before the season that has now been modified to reflect the force majeure edition and anything else related to COVID-19 and the return to play section of it. Today's vote also finalizes a plan to resume the 2020 season and provides players with certainty for the months ahead. It allows our members to move forward and continue to compete in the game they love. However, we recognize that we are all moving forward as players, as fans, as societies, as a world, into a future that looks much different than the one we envisioned a few months ago. There are problems we face collectively that are both more urgent and more important than competing on the field. We are grieving, we are fed up, we expect change, and we expect action. This change won't come on the field, but it will come partly through the force and determination of all who seek justice and equality. We hope our return to the field will allow fans a momentary release and a semblance of normalcy. We are committed as a group to doing all that we can, both as leaders in our sport as well as leaders in our communities, to help carry our countries, our communities, our leagues, and our sport forward. Navigating the challenges of the past several months would not have been possible without the incredible dedication and leadership shown by our executive board and bargaining committee. Finally, none of what we do as players would be possible without our supporters groups and fans, and we thank them for their continued support and solidarity. Statement from the MLSPA on, obviously, the CBA ratification, the return to play, but also everything else we are seeing in the world right now. I do think the ability for MLS players to get back on the field will give them a bigger platform to advocate for positive change. And I think that's a very, very good thing. And with MLS being a league that will be on the field first, it appears, I don't expect Major League Baseball to solve their problems and get back on the field before MLS does. I know originally the talk that we were hearing whispered was midweek after the weekend of July 4th is where we'd start to see MLS games in Orlando. Maybe things have shifted a little bit now, but we're talking early July. The NBA, I think I've seen that their finals could be as late as October now with whatever their return to play is going to be. The NHL hasn't given you an update on a schedule yet. Football won't start in July. And baseball, I do not see starting before. MLS coming back is a big thing for the league. Obviously, it is a big thing for the players because they do have that certainty. They are taking less of a hit than players at Barcelona are, percentage-wise. MLS is going to pay the majority of their salaries out. They're paying more percentage-wise than Barcelona is, and more than a lot of clubs are. That needs to be shouted out because, again, when you compare the percentages of revenue that is going to be lost, MLS teams are going to lose the majority of their revenue if they don't have fans in the stands this year, period. And other clubs have bigger TV money to work with. So them needing cuts shows the severity of this. But MLS committing to pay out what was agreed to before this also needs to be celebrated as well, in my opinion. But I think the most important thing is for MLS right now to get back on the field. It's going to help them. They're going to be the first men's professional team sport to be back on the field. The NWSL will be the first team sport to be back on the field. Soccer as a whole will be the first sport back on the field on the professional level. That's going to help soccer in this country greatly. It's going to be a big thing for soccer fans to have that release, that, semblance of normalcy, as the MLSPA says. But I do think it's also going to give the players in both of those leagues a platform to advocate for change. And that is going to help that movement as well. That is going to help see more equality. That is going to help see all of these things that there's a lot of people fighting for right now. That's going to give these players an opportunity to lead the way from a professional athlete standpoint in the United States through action. And that's going to be a big part of this. So I'm ecstatic. We're going to have some action here soon. I'm ecstatic that they got this worked out. The better nature of both sides of this found a way through it because they both recognize the challenges. They both recognize the losses that you have right now financially. They've both agreed that both sides need the other one to grow what's happening. And there's been so much progress. Year 25 was going into it with a ton of promise. Year 25 looked like it was going to be one of the strangest years in the league, and I think it will go down as that. But year 25 should go down as a year that we will all remember in this league for a lot of reasons. And I think a lot of reasons on and off the field that we're going to remember this season for in MLS. So we will see a season here very soon, and I would expect some announcements coming later today, potentially, as to what the scheduling looks like and when we're going to see games.
Can't wait. Amen. And quoting the old Brian Cox interview with Sal Palantonio from ESPN, can't wait.
This is very true. Man, one more before we go because there's always stuff happening.
Go.
Jeez, this is getting out of hand. This one gets this. Since we're working through all of them right now. Yeah, kind of. Another round of testing in the Premier League. This is the 5th round of testing, and this is why you're seeing things come back. Round 1. 3 clubs were involved with 6 positives from 748 tests. Round 2. 2 positives from 2 different clubs out of 996 tests. Round 3. 4 positives from 3 different clubs out of 1,008 tests. Round 4, 0 positives out of 1,130 tests. Round 5, and this is the breaking news, David Ornstein of The Athletic, 1 positive test from 1,197 tests. Remember, they've added new people to the testing in these last 2 cycles. I would assume people who would be involved in match day presentation and things as you've branched it out. So you've had 13 positive tests from 5,079 total. You can play.
Yeah.
The protocols are working. You want 0 across the board completely, but as we've seen, one player feels like he got it from going out shopping. You have to be careful when you leave whatever bubble you've created for yourself, but yeah, 13 positive tests in 5,079 shows you that the people involved in the Premier League, the players, the staffs, are being careful, and they are doing a good job of this. And this is why you can do this and come back with the proper testing, with the proper protocols, and be safe. That should make you feel better. What the Premier League is having happen should make you feel better about MLS and the NWSL and what they were doing. You will see MLS testing start ASAP, because you're going to get ready for contact training ASAP. And the idea, at least, kind of connecting dots from all the different reports on this, was testing to ramp up ahead of contact training. Remember, Atlanta and Sporting Kansas City were set to do the distanced group training, the real intermediary step that we've not seen elsewhere, but allowing teams to work in groups 10 feet apart. You have to have the testing before you go to normal group training, where it's still small groups, but you have tackling, you have contact, you have close quarters. Then you go to full team training. So you're going to have testing start now, probably even as early as today, probably tomorrow at the latest. And you'll start to see these numbers in MLS. If players have been following all the protocols and most everybody has had some kind of training sessions going on, you should be okay. These numbers could look like round 1, where you had 6 positives out of 748 tests, but decrease as you go and not increase. That's what we want to see.
Yep. Anything else before you need to go?
No, I think that's going to be it. Let me make sure nobody else wanted to break news before we wrap up.
Okay.
So that's what happens.
Right.
No, we are good. So we got stoppage time later today, 2 o'clock on the 92.9 The Game Facebook page, facebook.com/929 The Game. Mike and I got a few things to talk about, so we'll get into all of that and more as we go today. Thanks for listening, y'all. Thanks for being part of the show. Thanks for sending us messages and comments and questions and all of that. Like I've been saying a lot lately, just do what you can in your circle, in your world, to make the greater world a better place. I've been really reminded lately of a statement that REM didn't come up with it, but I first came across it because of REM and their tours in the 80s, and it was specifically related to the environment, but I think it reflects what we're seeing right now. Think global, act local. Like, we can do things in our sphere of influence to make the world a better place. Do that. Think globally, but don't get caught up in things that we can't control globally and not do the things we can locally to make things better. So thanks for all of you guys making our lives better. Thanks for making the show better. We appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow with a new one. Jessica Charman will be hanging out with us in the morning tomorrow to catch up on all of this stuff. So until then, mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.